if there's a way that you can do something where you scan your body in store and create something where you've got like body types, and then you can start working on, it helps with inventory management and all that. And I'll never forget, I was told that is one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard. She told me bluntly. And now I'm sitting here going like, and now I'm actually advising a company in the fit space, and I'm sitting there going like, I had this idea back in like 2003 or 2004, and I was told that, like laughed out of the room.
Hi, and welcome to the Future of Development podcast. My name's Anthony Amunategui, and I'm here to inspire people to find amazing careers in the construction development world. If you like our podcast, please make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really like our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Phil, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on today. You and I have spent some time together in the last couple of months. It's been fun, and I'm glad to have you on.
Yeah, well, yeah, Anthony, really appreciate the time. I mean, it's been great to connect, as you said, over the last couple of months.
We were at a big show down in Dallas, and just kind of seeing where the future of the the retail world is going. And there was a lot of great ideas exchanged there, and we got to meet with a lot of great retail people. I think it was fun to see people coming back out of their shells and meeting again.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think there's nothing like, I think that kind of human connection and being able to connect and talk to people about kind of where things are going. And you can just feel, I think, the vibrancy and, just this notion of being alive again.
Yeah, that notion of being alive again, right? Feeling, being around it. Not that Zoom hasn't added to my life. I mean, for sure, this platform of Zoom and being able to meet with people has added a huge component of things like people I can meet with regularly that it was difficult to do before. This has really taken that and made it easy. But I still do crave that physical contact, that physical part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, it's one of those things where I think you're right. And Zoom has been able to connect. Like, I mean, just this morning, I was on a call with somebody from Europe who I've known for quite a few years, but hadn't, I mean, we just had a kind of a quick, casual, 15-minute kind of catch up. And I mean, those are the kind of things that I think, that this this level of kind of technology is added. And so it's additive, right? It's not, it doesn't replace, I think that human connection. What it does is it just adds to it, and it allows you to stay connected to people, I think, in a much different way. So and I think you're starting to kind of see that kind of permeate within the retail space.
The only thing I'm missing now is, remember on Star Trek they had that little beam me up Scotty button on their chest, right? If I push that little button, I need that. That's the next level from here, right? Maybe another pandemic we have, and we'll get the transporter, right, the device. And my only request is, whoever invents that, if I could be transported and lose 10 pounds on the other side, right, so I could land and just be about 10 pounds lighter, that would be a perfect invention. So whoever out there is working on that this now moment, just remember, when I land on the other side of my transport, I'd like to be about 10 pounds lighter, and that'd be perfect.
Body kind of breaks up in particles and transports, that it just sheds a couple of particles, along the way.
Like leaves the fat somewhere that can be useful in society. It make makeup out of it or something. I don't know, whatever they do with that. But hey, before we get too carried away, let's get back into your background. You have one of the most diverse backgrounds of anybody I've ever met. From starting from law school and ending up in the retail world. I think the audience really would love to hear that journey that you went on.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like ages ago, but yeah, I was, kind of early 20s. I think graduated with a degree in history and was kind of lost and trying to figure out, what the hell I was going to do. And ended up, went to law school. And I remember I was clerking for this attorney or law office, and I was meeting with a lot of corporate clients. Like, I was sitting there and they were doing a lot of incorporation, a lot of entrepreneurs, people that were coming in and telling us about their dreams and all the companies and the things they wanted to create. And I was on that side of the table, like sitting there taking notes, figuring out how like we're just going to incorporate their businesses and the things they wanted to do. And I'm like, wow, this is kind of mundane and boring, to be honest with you. Like I want to be on that side. I want to be the guy that's telling people my ideas and what I want to do and how we can kind of change, the world or the fabric of kind of industries. And at that point, I realized that was, I wanted to be more on the business side of things. And, ultimately, after law school, went to business school down at Texas A&M, met had a professor who ran the retail studies department while I was getting my MBA. And after I graduated, moved to San Francisco and started working at Gap. Started kind of in the field operation side of things, and then ultimately moved over to marketing.
So from law school to Gap, that's that is not a linear line of development. I look back at my career, and when you talk about that side of the table, I really can relate to that. I can remember when someone was going to buy a CDO Group from me, and I was sitting in this group in this big old boardroom in this really fancy company. And they were like, hey, putting the numbers together and putting the deal together. And I looked across the table, everybody on the other side of the table, and I didn't want to be any of them, right? Even though they had this fancy office, they had this big thing, and they wanted to buy our people and the clients we had. They were just, we were just in numbers. Like, hey, if I could buy this company, I can get this group of clients, and then they wanted, the part of the deal was I had to come work for them for a few years, and I'm like, I think I would jump out one of these windows if it was, they were up like on 33rd floor or something. I'm like, I will jump out of these windows if I had to do this every day. And you make these decisions that ultimately change it. So you go from law school, from being a law clerk, and you end up at Gap. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was life changing in a lot of ways. Moved to San Francisco. It's where I met my wife, and it was like you look at those kind of decisions in life, and it was one of those ones where I think I've generally followed my gut. And I think a lot of people are like, why would you leave law school and think about things? It just wasn't for me, right? I mean, and I encourage people. I mentor a lot of young entrepreneurs and people, and ultimately it's, you have to do what's best for you and follow kind of what's that right path, not doing what other people want you to do. And I think when you have that kind of North Star, it then takes the team, it takes things, and people kind of really can understand and respect that. And I've done that with my career. I've left a lot of money, to your point, like on the table because of certain things, but at the same time, it's what's best, and have and made me, I think, the most fulfilled. And it's kind of how I run my businesses today.
The advice I give every young person, I mean, my kids included, go have 100 jobs, right? Literally, I think the best thing that ever happened to me was I was young. I'd go to work for somebody. I'd work for one company and another company, and that was great. I was always, no matter where I went, I was their favorite employee. But I just, like, my whole real point was to get some experience out of it. I didn't want to be there forever. I just wanted to go in and suck up all the knowledge I could get. And truth was, I had to answer my pants. I look over here and go, well, I've been doing this. I'm like, I can't do this for 20 years. I'd go over and do something else. I'm like, yeah, I can't do that for 20 years. And I think it served me well. Like having a little bit of knowledge about a lot of things helped me kind of decide, pick something. And I was going to be an accountant, right? And all of a sudden I ended up in construction, and then I started pulling on that thread, and it just unwound into a career I just loved. I loved everything about solving problems and the things. And I would not have known that had I stuck to what my mother wanted me to do, was be a butcher, right? She got me my first job as a butcher. I'm like, I've been cutting meat in some public somewhere down in Florida. And, hey, not that being a butcher is not a great career. Look, whoever's butchers out there, it's a great career. It just, I wouldn't have had what I loved doing, which is construction. And it really turned out to be something that became a passion for me. And you start to really unwind your passions, and you start to get that. So as you transition to San Francisco and you start to look at the retail world, that's an interesting spot to be in. A Gap, real diverse company, lots of intelligent people putting things together there. That had to be a great experience.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I really cut my teeth, I think, both from the retail as well as a marketing perspective. If I go back and I look at the talent and the people that I worked with at that time, so many of them have gone on to, now are president CEOs of, of a lot of major retail companies. And I look at the talent that was assembled and the people who I had an opportunity to work with it and realize was pretty special. But at the same time, it was also unique. Like I'll never forget, this was kind of early days of online business. And I remember I was talking, I was talking to the woman who ran, it was kind of called Gap Direct at the time. And that kind of oversaw all of the Gap Inc. properties from online. And I was in a meeting and I was like, hey, you know what? Look, I said, I think really the future is figuring out how to build software, how to scan people's bodies through whether, some level of technology. And at the time, I think, mobile phones really weren't that pervasive. And I said, we got to figure this out. I think if there's a way that you can do something where you scan your body in store and create something where you've got like body types, and then you can start working on, it helps with inventory management and all that. And I'll never forget, I was told that one of the dumbest ideas I've ever heard. She told me bluntly. And now I'm sitting here going like, and now I'm actually advising a company in the fit space, and I'm sitting there going like, I had this idea back in like 2003 or 2004, and I was told that, like laughed out of the room. But, so it's like, there's a lot of talented people, but at the same time, I think there was also this, it was as an organization, I think they were missing the mark on what the future could be and what the opportunities were. And so ultimately, I left there and, started moving more into, I think, the technology space, and went and ran retail at Nintendo, where I was running retail marketing and the strategy on that side of the business around the height of the Wii. And that was really fun and exciting. And ultimately spent 6 years there, which was a blast. Nintendo was an amazing company to work for. Learned a lot, obviously working in a Japanese culture, but that afforded me the opportunity to go to Nest, which was at the time was breaking a lot of ground within the connected home space, and really was on the forefront. And it was their pre kind of Google acquisition. And again, another wild ride of, and that was really kind of what got me into, the startup space, and really was such an invaluable, 2 years that I spent there.
Technologies seem to, you come up with ideas like the body scan, right? That was definitely a genius idea. Right. But the fear that there was all these things like, oh, people will never want to scan them and they're going to be afraid who has the data. And oh, my God, all the stuff that comes up with that. And you can see very quickly as people get more and more comfortable and get more and more, the technology will, our ability to adapt it catches up, right? Because it just takes a little while for us to see it, the vision of it. I mean, people, when I talk about AI, people are like, oh, my God, the robots, they all think Terminator. Right. So the first thing you think of when you say that, they're like Terminator, we're going to have the finger crawling across the street coming at us. And, the logic isn't there, because I really do believe that people take things they don't know. Right. And when I don't know something, I pull from all the data I have from the past, and whatever, even if it's illogical, I take it and I put it in there. Right. Hey, people are not going to want to scan themselves because one day I looked in the mirror and I was fat. And I'm like, well, yeah, I got it. But the whole idea is that if I can find a way to make the shopping experience less intrusive, or, less friction on it, where I can get things easier. Because ultimately what happens to me when I buy online is, I can't buy here. My body type cannot buy anything from Amazon, right? I don't know who their sizes are. I don't know who XL in Amazon they're measuring, but I get them, and the jackets, the shirts are like the buttons are trying to get to you from here. Like I can't. There's a 6-inch gap between the two of them. I'm like, yeah, you're XL what? XL like kids or something. So I'm always mad, and that whole process is a friction for me. So then I can't go buy from Amazon, which really bums me out, because I'm a guy who's moving fast and I want the convenience stuff, right? The convenience factor. And if I could scan my body and know that the clothes that you're making would fit me, that process becomes so much easier. And I can see in the future that being able to do that much easier then and trusting it, right? Trusting that the data is going to be out there, and you guys aren't going to show the whole world that I got a roll in my belly, and you're going to put it out on social media. All of a sudden, oh, look, everybody, Anthony's got a look, he's got a belly, and that picture doesn't end up somewhere weird. That scan doesn't end up somewhere weird. So just trusting that you've put together the structures to support the scanning and the opportunity. So I think that's the part about technology that's hard as we look at it, just to adapt it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I was, after I left Nest, a couple of guys who I met there, we started this company called Beta. And, really what we were doing was we were creating not only experiential retail, but at the same time, we were trying to gather and capture a lot of the data in store that you could get online. And, there was this fear, well, you've got cameras and all of these things in your stores. Is it invasion of privacy? What are you doing? And I think, what we were saying is like, look, we're aggregating this data. Like it's anonymous. And to your point, nobody really cares about seeing what a body scan of you looks like, right? I mean, it's really just saying, look, we're capturing a lot of this data, and then it's ultimately for your benefit. It's not going to sit there and nobody's going to go out, and even if even if something like that is even hacked, who cares? Nobody's going after that. It's and trying to do anything with it, right? I mean, the information, the data you have, it's trying to make better informed decisions for businesses, and so that their inventory management, so they've got the right products there. A lot of stuff in the fit space today is if you look, people's body types, your point, like you may have a lot of people that are XLs, but an extra large can be different things in different places, right? I mean, you may carry a lot of if your weight more in your chest versus another area, and I think what it's doing is just helping inform so that you can create a better product and a better experience ultimately for the consumer, and it's just aggregating it. Now, there's certain things I think we have to be very careful of when it comes to privacy. Things around financial data, medical data, things like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, like what something that you're capturing in a retail store is just it's it's in I think those are the things where you can kind of say, hey, no, this has a much different kind of benefit, and it's not intrusive, and in fact it's generally fairly anonymous.
I think that I worry that it's going to be like my buddies when I was a kid making fun of me, right? Literally, when I think about someone capturing my scan, it's going to be, it brings me right back to being 12 years old and my friends on the playground making fun of me. And literally, I think that's where it comes from. Because when I really think about it logically, I'm like, really? My scan and the other 50 million scans that are out there, might be, and as we start to, grow these technologies and learn from them, and we break through the fear or the embarrassment or the thought of embarrassment or the story that we create up about, being that really noticing that's not anything logical. That's a 12-year-old, belief I'm hanging on to. And I really look and go, great, I can see a future where custom shirts are made, right? A shirt that's, I get scanned and that shirt model is fit exactly for me. Hey, I like it a little bit loose here. Right. And I can custom make a shirt that goes right to the production line, and boom, I get a shirt that fits me in a couple of days. Right. I can see a future where that happens. And I don't, if you think about what retail's been to date, you build a type that's close, but never perfect. And, you're kind of, everybody has to pick from those. But, as we get to, our society is getting smarter and smarter. As I look around, the upgraded experience is what everybody's looking for. Not just the generic, close enough for me. Now I want an upgrade experience that works for me. And, I think that's the topic I'm going to get into next, because I think you've this huge experience with the pop-up store, or I'm sorry, you call it the pop-in store. And I want to make the differentiate between the two of those is, that experience, the upgraded retail experience that people will have, not just going in and shopping the shelves, but something that's tailored more to a group of people.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. I think to your point, you're going back and looking at tailored opportunities, right? I mean, at one time, if you look at something that was very bespoke, it was only something that if you had, if you had the money to go out and buy something, you could get that customized, right? I mean, it was, if you think about kind of going, the days of going and getting a bespoke suit in London and Savile Row, like, I mean, like that's what it was about when you think about it. So people have this connotation that if you wanted something customized, that it was going to be expensive. And I think through technology, you can go on, whether it's building a pair of, Nikes on their store and customizing that. We have the capabilities now to do that in the furniture space at Model Number, the company that I'm running now. But at the same time, I think it was always about creating these, curated experiences for people, and then allowing for some level of, customization on top of it. But as we're talking about, creating kind of these unique experiences in the physical space, I think there is kind of what people know as a pop-in, and that, or excuse me, a pop-up shop, and that's where a brand takes a space, and all of a sudden they go out and rent and lease a space for a short period of time, and that's kind of traditionally what a pop-up. But I felt like, and what we were doing at Beta was we were working with a lot of brands, and we were kind of calling them pop-ins, and in that we owned and controlled the four walls, but then we allowed brands to come in and on a temporary basis have an own kind of mini shop in shop, not for an extended period of time, but maybe for a limited period of time, where they controlled the space, they owned the product, they owned the experience, and we worked with them to build it. And I think those type of collaborations are really unique, because again, it gives customers better experiences. It creates a sense of urgency in trying to drive traffic, because that it's not going to be there for a really long period of time. But at the same time, sometimes it brings unique brands that that never had a physical space, or that didn't have the resources, both through maybe the financial resources to go out and to rent a space on a long-term lease, or to maybe even have just the staffing to be able to man something like that. And those were the things we wanted to do and create unique opportunities within physical retail. And I think you're seeing a lot of that. And I think collaborations are just becoming, I think, almost table stakes for most brands these days.
I see that retail world is, we're coming back online, right? People are wanting to go out and feel the fabrics and see the, be out in public and go to retail world. But retailers are a little scared, right? As they start to go back out there and they're signing leases and timeframes and fighting over properties with other retailers. As they start to look at it, I think it becomes this very we're seeing retailers really look at strategies that are all encompassing. It can't just be bricks and sticks, right? You gotta, all right, great. I'll pick a couple of key spots where I can put a flagship store. I know it's going to work. I'll plant my stake there. And some of those are even loss leaders. They're going, the Michigan Avenues, the Times Squares, the places where the brands want to be seen internationally. Every time you travel to New York City, you're seeing a Swatch store, and the rent that they're paying to go there. Great, right? But as I leave that and I have a customizable watch or watch experience, or the ability to buy a watch, with different face colors and different brands, and can I do that online? Once I've seen that, can I now do that online? Once I figure out what kind, I like this kind of plastic watch, or I like this one over here, this model over here, I thought it was cool, right? I wore that for 20 years, it was great, and I want to go get another one. I can now, I might be able to do that online. So I think brands are starting to look at both the experience of having some key locations for real estate, and doubling down on those locations, and building really great experiences in those stores. And then, doing what you're talking about, the pop-up store, today with the amount of data that they have, those experiential pop-up stores aren't just, a tent out in the parking lot with some guys with a fold-up table. They become real experiences. We're seeing some pop-up or pop-in stores that are over the top. I mean, where they're painting whole buildings, and they really are investing in something that it was, completely not unexpected.
Yeah, look, I think brands have to realize that there's not a one size fits all approach, right? I mean, at one time, right? I mean, when I remember at Gap, I mean, it was just about you had to have physical, as many stores as you could get. And that's what retailers were doing. It's open as much as you can and have as much real estate as you can. And that was how big your brand was ultimately going to grow, right? I mean, you knew exactly what a box could produce And that was it. Now, obviously, with the emergence of kind of online, you've got an infinite store that's open 24 hours a day. But at the same time, your customer acquisition costs online are extremely expensive, especially if you're not a household brand, right? And you're not like the it brand at the time that everyone knows about. So you have to go out and spend a lot of money to acquire customers, especially when you look at, at one time it was easy, right? You could just go onto Facebook and acquire customers at a really cheap cost. Well, a lot of things have changed. Facebook isn't the dominant platform that it used to be, and then now you look at all of it's gotten to a point where people are on different platforms shopping with different through different means, and it becomes expensive to go out and to acquire those customers purely on through digital advertising. Has a much lower CAC, and your sometimes your conversions can be higher. So it's like, how do you balance that between the digital and the physical world? And I think brands are starting to realize it. Sometimes it's working with other retailers because you don't want to open stores. You see that a lot more like in classic kind of CPG, versus other products where you really begs kind of to touch and to feel. And brands are opening, to your point, either flagship stores or maybe in some flagship and then opening in smaller locations in secondary and tertiary. But I think gone are the days for most brands where you're going to be opening up hundreds or even thousands of stores, right? It's having those key touch points where customers are, and then working with other brands and creating collaborations, and then having an online presence that can, I think, then match what that looks like. And then there's obviously a whole host of other ways, through social media, through content development and stuff like that, you're connecting with companies, or excuse me, with that companies are connecting with consumers. So I think the game has changed, and it's, there's no one size fits all approach. And I don't think there's a blueprint. You have to find your own blueprint, right? You have to figure out what works, best for your brand, because, as I think as a business owner, and as executives, your brand best, and who your customer is, and what works, and you need to go out and find that, and not necessarily just emulate what somebody else is doing.
I could not agree more with you. The days of just rolling out the stores, and because that's all. At one point, that was the option that people had, but today the amount of stuff and data coming at the average buyer on a given day, it really forces us to be. We used to call it guerrilla marketing, right? We had little budgets, and we had to kind of create big ideas out of nothing. And, you rub two sticks together to make something really fabulous happen. That was fun, right? And somewhere in there, I do believe that, people got a little lazy, and the people that are going to win, the people that could roll out faster and more stores will be completely connected to not just the bricks and sticks portions of it, but they're working online. They're working locally. When we used to open up Einstein Bagels, every store that we opened at Einstein Bagels, the entire regional office would empty out, and they'd be down. They would see how big. We'd go 5 miles down the road with signs. Hey, bagels, buy one get one, or free bagels today. And day one we could see how many. The entire office. I mean, from the regional vice president or the regional operating president to that group, to all the way down to the maintenance people, and everybody in between would be at that store, waving signs, cheering people on, getting people excited. Those first few days of really getting a local market for people to see you. That was unheard of back then. You're out there, everybody kind of had fun doing it. And, each group would try to see how big of an opening we could have. This one we did, 5,000, this one we did 6,000, then we did 7,000, we had 9,000. And people were like, we did $9,000 worth of bagels, and it just became part of the culture to do it. Now, somewhere as we start to really look at the new environment, continue to look through different, resources and ways to grow. It challenges us to do that. And I think where we got to tap into is the millennials, right? As I look at the new generation that's coming up and what they're doing, they are untapped energy, right? I was interviewing a young man this morning, and it was just talking about his online experience and the things that TikTok, right? I never even thought about doing a TikTok. First of all, the only thing I know about TikToks are my kids are in my house dancing in front of a screen the whole time doing this. They got this, and I keep going, whatever they're doing, it seems like fun, but I have no idea how to do that. And like, I can advertise my company on TikTok. I'm not sure how I understand how that translate. And, you just start talking about it. And I'm like, there's something at 53 I need to tap into, right? I need to be able to tap into their knowledge and their experience, and then start to adapt, pepper in some of my, knowledge of how to, be consistent and really, create stuff happening, and their ideas of new stuff. And together there's the opportunity, right? As brands grow, I'm watching, coffee companies grow across this country, and some of them at record speed.
Yeah, look, it goes back to knowing your customer and knowing where they're at, right? I mean, I think you look at things like TikTok, you look at things that are popping up like the metaverse, you look at, some of, more, say, kind of legacy at this point, like, Instagram and Snapchat. I mean, you look and you have to understand, where is your customer, and what are they doing on those platforms, and how are they engaging with product, and then you ultimately decide what that means, right? I think a lot of times people just want to go jump in on a new shiny object, and your customer base may not even be there, right? I mean, maybe they are, but you got to figure that out, and I think it's happening even now, like, where everyone's like, oh, rushing into the metaverse. So I'm like, I've told people, like, it makes sense for certain brands, right? You need to have a presence and be there, maybe not selling product, but like maybe you have a storefront or whatever, because that works, because that you've got a consumer there. And then other people, it's like, you have no business being there. Like, you should understand what the platform is. You should wholeheartedly go in, experience it, know what it is. But if your customer is a 60-year-old female, like, there's no reason for you to be going in the metaverse, because they're not going to be there, right? I mean, it's just not. Now, if you're trying to expand and broaden out who your consumer base is, maybe, but like, so it's knowing where they're at, knowing the things they want, because you either have data on that, or you just have, I think it's having a little bit of that trial and error and dipping your toe into those certain areas. Like, I mean, when I was at, when we created Beta, we started with an 1,100 square foot shop in Palo Alto, California. And, eventually we grew to having 30 stores, 3 global stores, 2 in Japan, 1 in Dubai. And we were always trying different things. Like, Virgin Atlantic came to us and said, hey, like, we want to do, would you be interested in doing a pop-up inside of our, in our club, one holiday? And we're like, yeah, let's do it. Or, we did a pop-up in partnership with Mary Claire, because we were trying to expand our female, young female kind of, customer, but it was a low risk way for us to do it. We did it, as part of something that lasted for about 3 weeks in Soho, right? I mean, so we were creating, we did a partnership with Google, for South by Southwest, where we created a mini home, and we outfitted it with like cool, new technology, and we drove the thing from Austin, Texas to Portland, right? And then we stopped at different places, and we were constantly figuring out ways to do different things to connect with people in the physical realm. And it was just being opportunistic, understanding, but doing things in a low risk manner, right? And rather than and constantly trying and figuring out, okay, well, if that worked, well, let's lean in on that one a little bit more. If that one didn't, then we're not going to do that, or we're going to sit back, take the learning from what we had, and adapt. And I think that's ultimately what it kind of comes down to when you're looking at retail, because like I said, there is no formula for what works and what doesn't. It really is what works for you and what doesn't work for you.
Well, and keep being bold about it, right? Taking those little steps where when you were young and you were broke and you just kept taking stuff, taking swings at it, right? All of a sudden you get to be a mature company. And I think that's one of the problems, is that, we're too mature for that. We can't try an email campaign like that. If someone sees us and calls us a spammer, then what will we be, right? But when you were young and sending out emails to everybody and blasting the world, you're like, great, I can do that now. And all of a sudden you get too sophisticated for the creative idea, and tapping into all that, right now, like you said, take low risk opportunities to put a house on a vehicle and transport it around and show it off. The thing is, I don't think you understand the outcome of that until you try it, right? In fact, in trying it, in actually doing it, other things pop up from there, right? Other ideas sprout from there, but they don't sprout when you just you take an idea and you throw it in a box and say, nah, I can't do that. I don't think you ever, I don't think, one creative idea really spouts dozens of other ones, right? When people take on creative risk, it's not just, it becomes, it grows other creative ideas. Other people in the organization take risks with you. The other ones get brave and go, yeah, look, if that campaign worked, here, I'm gonna go try strapping. I'm gonna put tires on the bottom of the house and drive it around. Or hey, I'm gonna find ways for people to integrate in the metaverse that way. I was at McDonald's World Convention last week, and they were talking about the metaverse, and I'm like, well, yeah, it seems a little early to get into that, but they're already attacking that thing full force, right? They've got you and your friends, and they're creating gear and stuff that you can wear in the metaverse, and metaverse property, that stuff that's really creative with their ideas in it. And one of the ones I thought was genius was people interacting on the metaverse together in some interaction world, right, where they're playing cards or playing games together, and then they all order McDonald's, and the Uber Eats folks deliver it all to each person individually, and they're eating McDonald's together while playing video games. And just think, that's just adding to another order, and not just one order. Now that's 4 or 5 orders at a time for the brand, right? That's a creative way just to incrementally grow the segment. Hey, look, you guys as a team can all, Eric, how much fun would it be if we all put orders in? We were there, and they've now implemented Watson, right? They've got that Watson ordering system. So when you go to the front, when you go to the drive-through, you'll have Watson answer you there. And I had my kids got to go to the convention, and we were trying to check it, right? They were like, we'll like to have a cappuccino with cheese, and we'll have my little kids were really playing with it, and Watson took our order pretty freaking amazing. And even they can work on upselling it for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and again, that goes back to knowing your customer and knowing where they're at, right? I was a couple years ago, I hosted some McDonald's execs in one of our stores at Beta, and they were really trying to understand like how we were capturing a lot of data about our customer, because I found it was really interesting, and I can't remember the numbers, so I don't want to sit here and kind of misquote or misrepresent things, but there at the time, and this was probably 2018, 2019, McDonald's was looking at Starbucks, and Starbucks, most people were paying, this was, even pre-pandemic, were paying with the app, right? So they were already making those pre-purchases, and Starbucks had tons of data and information on who their customer was. McDonald's had very little information, because McDonald's tends to be more of a at the time was more of a cash-based business, right? So somebody would come in, spend, $4 or $5 on a meal, and they'd pay in cash. And McDonald's had no idea who was coming in and out of their stores, especially in the United States. I think in Europe, there were a lot more kiosk orders, and they were able to kind of have a little bit more information. But in the United States, there's a very low, had very little information on who was actually shopping. Obviously you can kind of, have somebody stand there and do kind of ethnography type of testing and figuring out who it is, but like from capturing that data at kind of the point of purchase was very low. And I think they're obviously putting systems in place. I think the pandemic has helped a lot of that, with people kind of pre-ordering and now getting in and being able to kind of download that app. But it's really critical, especially to those businesses. And if you're a cash-based business, of trying to figure that out. I think as McDonald's learned and knows who their customer is, they can do those type of things. And again, it's very low risk. And as you said, you've got a bunch of kids who are now sitting there like fully engaged with the brand, playing video games, figuring out, and the metaverse is where they're congregating, right? And it's like, yeah, lean in on that, because it's an area where that person is, and they're enjoying the space, and it's smart, I think, marketing and branding.
That custom experience, we start to look at the metaverse or customizing, the changes that are coming at us, and the technology to run it. As you looked at custom furniture, right? Being able to put it into a design, I was looking at a group the other day that could take take a piece of millwork or a cabinet and fit it into a design. And as soon as everybody agreed on the design, they liked it, it actually gets shot over to CNC, and it can start cutting right from that. All the sizes and measurements for that piece of furniture at that size could now get cut over to CNC to those exact specifications, right? They could see it in the room, even digitally be in the room, kind of with some augmented reality, and you could be in there, look around and go, all right, spatially look at it, go, okay, look, I got this over there, and oh, I can see how that drawer is going to open. I think that as we continue to get smarter at this, those are the things that getting way more customizable, taking the furnitures that we're using, the experiences that we're having, and get it to an even higher level. And I think that's the approach we have to look across the board: is how can we continuously upgrade the experience on every level?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing that a lot right now at Model Number in the furniture space. I mean, and it has two, I think, large benefits. One, I think, to the consumer, it's ensuring that you're getting a product that you want. And we talked about the fit and everything. I think you're going to start to see that in the apparel space. You're starting to see it, in what we're doing in furniture. There's other brands that are also that have some of the technology and capability. We're really the only ones on the 3D printing side of it. But when you can customize things for people, return rates go down significantly, right? Which we know that the biggest expense on on e-commerce right now is reverse logistics, right? It's when people go out and like, I don't know what size I am, so or I don't know what color I want, I don't know, so I'm going to order like 7 of them, and I'm going to keep 1 or 2. And you realize, like, okay, you've completely eroded the margins when, especially companies, it always baffles me when I order things, you order multiple things and they show up at a different time. So like they ship them from 7 different places and you get 7 packages, and then you return them, and you're like, okay, wow, how much did they pay in shipping, which was free shipping to me, right? So you look at, when you can customize things, your return rates go down significantly. There's a huge sustainability component to it as well, right? I mean, you're not touching things as much, you're not returning things. So, and then you're customizing that piece so that at the same time, if you're making it so that it's that inventory is only for that individual, you're not holding inventory. So it changes the business. You're not sitting with large warehouses of, thousands of units of something, and then figuring out how you're going to discount it and creating additional waste. So for us, we look at it as, one, providing, I think, a better and optimal, service to the consumer. And then also, I think, we have a really big mission as an organization, to eliminate waste. So we manufacture all of our products, made to order. We don't hold any inventory, and we also use plant resin and sustainably farmed products, and now we're starting to get into even recycled plastics as well. So you start to see that, and I think consumers understand and believe when you have a mission, that you wholeheartedly believe in, and at the same time you're just trying to create a better experience for them. And I think ultimately at the end of the day that wins.
I think it starts at home, right? I think your team gets excited about it as well, right? When you're making environmentally impactful for furniture that not just makes the environment people live in better, but the way that you build it is in alignment with that same logic, right? They can get proud of, they're not poisoning the world with the stuff they're making. And I think that transitions through the whole experience of it, right? The customer gets excited about having this piece of furniture that's theirs, designed for them, right? And when you walk into their house, I know that that's what I want for my home. Is I want you to walk in, this is me, this is an expression of who I am, right? My life. And when you walk in my home, I want you to feel my family, I want you to feel the love in here, I want you to feel the way we are. And each one of those is an expression, each part of those is an expression of each piece of furniture we pick, each artwork we put in. When I was a kid, it was pretty much an expression of how much I could find at a flea market. Today, I'm getting a little bit pickier about what I'm putting in, and it's fun to keep looking at that, right? So I mean, those that as a company, you're called to a higher requirement, right? You can't just get away with burning and scorching the earth like companies did in the past.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have to be, look, like you said, it has to start at kind of home. It's within the DNA of the organization. And I think you try to force feed it, if you try to kind of greenwash, or, you don't, or you lack kind of authenticity, I think consumers will see right through it. And you really have to build, I think, a culture around that. And I think it's important, for companies too, especially, you see this now, like there's been a lot of movement, right? There's a lot of turnover in companies, and people are trying to find places where they can have greater flexibility, um, within the organization, of where they work, how they work, the shared values, right? I mean, consumers are making choices. It's definitely a buyer's market right now as an employee, and you want to make sure that you have the right people who you're working with every day, that understand and believe in the products, that and the mission and the vision of the organization. And I think that that's really critical. And I think you're finally seeing, I think, a lot of companies kind of wake up to that, because I think employees already have kind of realized that, like, life's too short. I don't want to go work someplace that I don't necessarily believe in kind of what I'm doing, because I can find a paycheck in just about anywhere. And I think it's really important, as you start to think about kind of building a culture within in an organization. And yeah, we're really, I think, mission driven in that regard. And I've learned a lot, I think, over the years, and I've made a ton of mistakes, and I think, but I also have worked in a lot of great companies where I loved the culture, and there were companies where I didn't like the culture of where I was at, and sometimes or managers and things were toxic, and you take. I remember when we started Beta, my co-founders and I, we looked at, we had worked at places like Google and Apple and Nintendo, and like all of these major large tech companies which had people experience. And we said, what were the things that we liked about these organizations, and what were the things we didn't like about these organizations? And we tried to take all of that and kind of build that into what we were doing as a culture. And of course, in some areas we excelled in that area, and in some places we failed, and you make those adjustments. And I think ultimately you have to be able to do that as a company.
Watching our evolution of that, having employees knowing how much of that to put on, how to give them freedom, but give some guardrails, make sure that we have production value, and we have expectations, and we have workability between teams. That's I find myself as a leader looking and going, all right, I spend more time thinking about how to keep that gel going, right? How to tap into the millennial employee that's here, and employees that are here, and go, all right, look, you've got something I don't understand, and I want to tap into that, and then really help supporting them with the stuff that they need to hone that skill and bring that skill together. Because ultimately, I think people want some guidance and some support, and making sure that they don't fall off the deep end, or someone's got their back as they go through this, right? But making them brave and going, hey, look, it's okay. You're going to step out, and we're going to make you bigger than you are, and you're going to love it. You're going to look back over your career and love having done that. And I think for me, I'm always looking to say, all right, how do we look at each person in our organization and have them be a contributor? Like even my family, right? Even the kids. I do believe that kids, when they don't contribute to the family, they're lifeless, and they step off, and they start to feel a little bit separated from it. And when my kids do the dishes at night, and when they I want them at dinner at night, we hold hands and pray, and when they contribute and are part of that, it doesn't have to be so rigid. My parents were pretty rigid, and maybe a combination of both works, right? And tapping into them and hearing their voice. Same thing happens with our office, and I think that's the fun part for watching the pendulum swing, right? Today we're learning how to utilize both sides of it, right? When I was a kid, it was kids should be seen and not heard, right? And you kind of stuck them in a corner, and every time you popped up, your parents kind of knocked you on the head and like, hey, hey, stupid, we don't need to hear from you yet. And today, and by the way, that's thousands of dollars worth of therapy to unwind all that, right? Today I'm spending all this time trying to figure out, all right, I had to unwind a lot of that behavior, all that teaching. And and now how can I encourage people in a different way? How can I bring some excitement to them and encourage them and light. My wife is Greek, and we go to the Greek Easter coming up here next week, which is my favorite ceremony. And one of my favorite parts of that is that during the ceremony, the priest walks in with a candle, and then they light the first row. They light the first row, and the first row lights the second row. The second row lights the third row, and you can watch the light as it comes back through the church. And what I find amazing about that is, if we can live life that way, if we can run companies that way, if all we do today is light someone's light and watch them light somebody else's light, and we grow companies that way, I think the same thing happens, and the same thing happens out with our clients as we get them excited about our products, and then they get other people excited about our products. That's what we're all looking for, those opportunities to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I think it's the way you run companies. I think it's just, I think the way that, I was just traveling through Utah when took the kids on their spring break, and we were drove, and we weren't like on the interstates, we were on the back roads, and we were going to a lot of the national parks and stuff, and you just encounter a lot of different people. And I think I travel a lot. I've traveled a lot in the US as well as the world. And I think when you have that ability to connect with people, you realize that you have more in common with people than you disagree with them on, right? And I think unfortunately right now there's a lot of things which maybe in the political spectrum, there's a couple of hot button items. I've always said I've wanted to take I'd love to kind of get together and like be able to get like almost like two people from like every state, different walks of life, and host a really large dinner party and basically say there's 5 things you can't talk about, and I guarantee you that you would have an amazing night of all the things you do have in common, and that the things you want to talk about, and the uniqueness of I think who we are as individuals, and getting back to I think those level of connections. I think that you would realize that the common thread that I think we have within humanity is much greater than I think what our differences are.
When we stop and remember that we're on this lifeboat, this rock floating out in the middle of nowhere together, right? I mean, all the yelling over stupid stuff that we do, just remembering this is a lifeboat. We're all on it together. How do we all support each other and making sure that we divvy up things together? It's gonna be fun. So I love the philosophical part of this, and I love the development part of this. As we look at the future for customization and the stuff that you're working on, what's the stuff that you're hedging? What's the future hedge that you're working on?
Yeah, I think it was interesting in a lot of the customization work. We first kind of started. We talked. I think you mentioned earlier about kind of a pendulum or swing. I mean, like I remember we said, okay, let's give people like the aspect to like you can customize every element of what you wanted, and ultimately people don't want to be able to. People don't want to build something from scratch. They kind of want the template because when you can do too much, it overwhelms people, right? I mean, and I think there is still an element of like being able to kind of take something about 80% of the way and then let people kind of finish up the last 20%. And so I think that was one of the learning of like, okay, we don't want to, you can kind of even see behind me, there's like, we have these like 3D printed like bins and bases and stuff. Like at one point you could go in and you could build it from scratch, create the twist on it. Like people don't want to do that. Like people don't have time. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Like, I mean, it's like, no, create like the catalog, create like what is there. And then if I want to go in and change it because I need a table that's a little bit longer because it doesn't fit my room, what you have, it's like you create a base model and then you let everyone say, you know what, I need this to be, instead of a 4-person, I need to be 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 people because I have this. Or, hey, you know what, like that's a little bit too wide. I need something that's a little bit more narrow, right? So I think with customization, it's creating a base where people can start. And I think a lot of shoe companies have done this really cool where they'll take the base and then you can just go in and adapt what it is that you want and make it your own from there. So you're kind of really just, it's that last mile, so to speak, of customization rather than actually building it from scratch. And I feel like that's where customization you'll see it most. I think in the companies and the brands that do that will be most successful in that realm. And that's what we have, and that's how our operations are now set up to do that. So it's, we work and our designers work on creating kind of the base level. We do that both for customers on the residential side, as well as even, on the commercial side. We have a catalog, but we go out and people and say, here's what we got. You want us to create something different? We'll sit down and we'll work with you. And even now, like, we're going to start opening kind of what we call design centers, where customers can come in and sit down with a designer and work and build something that they need for their home, right? Or that meets their needs. And like, we'll have office hours, so to speak, in some of these design centers, where you'll have a designer on hand, either virtually in some cases, depending on where we're located, or in person in certain markets. So yeah, that's what we really see as kind of the future of engagement, especially in the furniture industry.
Awesome. It's exciting having you on, Phil. I look, brother, I love talking to you and hanging out and having dinner together. I look forward to more of that stuff and getting together soon. You and I got to talk about Dubai, and we'll do a whole other podcast on Dubai and all those craziness, about what's going on there. Let's continue to expand our conversations. I think talking about personalizing and template creating and all that stuff that you're doing over there is great. Hey, if people want to get a hold of you, where do they get a hold of you?
There's a couple different ways. I mean, I think the easiest way is Phillip, PHILLIP at model-no.com. So that's Phillip at modelnumber.com. It's probably just the easiest way for people to reach out to me. Yeah, it's kind of go from there. And, I'm always kind of very open and happy, to connect with people, and I'm also very transparent. If there's things we want to work on together, I'll let you know. If not, I'm also, I like to return. I try to return as many messages as possible. So.
Well, Phillip, I got to tell you, I love hanging out with you. So I'm grateful. We'll have you on the show some more. And as always, brother, thanks. Thanks a lot for being on here and doing this. I'm grateful.
Anthony, also grateful as well. Love the time we spent together, and always fun chatting. I'm actually going to be in Chicago next month, so I will reach out to you ahead of time. So
cool.
Heather.
Thanks. Thanks for joining us. My name is Anthony Amunategui, always looking for people to bring insight into the industry, finding ways to inspire people to have amazing careers in the development world. If you liked our podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. If you really liked our podcast, make sure you hit the little bell. Thanks again for listening. Please share it with your friends.